Hello, everyone. It's Aaron Smith here. Hope everyone's okay. Just to let you know, I have closed captions turned on the PowerPoint, and I also have closed captions turned on Teams. So, welcome to our final session of the masterclass. So, thank you everyone for joining me. Hope everyone's enjoying me on the recording. Really looking forward to delivering this session, just to talk about a few things about admin and think about how we do things as well, and then looking at the plans for going forward. So, welcome everyone to the session. What we're going to do is just give you a little bit of a recap about a few things, just to remind you about things. So, of course, the reason why we do this is we're looking at Microsoft's mission. So, as I've said in the last two sessions, at Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person in every organization on the planet to achieve more. And of course, when it comes to accessibility and disability, I think that is really important. I also know that as we have a CEO that has a growth mindset concept, he looks at growth mindset within Microsoft as a company and uses that really well. And I think that when we look at education, our schools, our colleges, our organizations, we have to do that as well. And when you have a CEO that says accessibility is a Microsoft priority, we focus on design and building products that our customers love, that are accessible to everyone and built in for each of us, it's really important. And I think that's kind of what we've learned over the last 2 weeks and what we're going to talk about this week. So, of course, if you don't know who I am, my name's Aaron Smith. I'm the UK's dyslexia and SEND consultant. I talked a lot about myself in the first session. I'll briefly go over that I am a severely dyslexic adult. I've worked in the field of dyslexia for over 20 years now. I'm an expert in assistive technology. I have been working with Microsoft for over 3 years now and delivering awareness of accessibility into our schools using Microsoft technology. And for me, it's kind of been that grounding point between education, business, and not for profit that actually I can see the benefits of using Microsoft from an accessibility point of view. And they're the things we're going to talk about today. So let's just have a go and have a look at what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to recap. So we're going to have a look at what we've talked about. We're going to go into we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 admin. So I'm just going to go into a bit more detail about the admin, a few things you can think about, a few things you can also deploy as an admin, and then we're going to look at that concept of digital transformation, how we move from the point of actually finding all these resources and how we move it. So we're going to talk about digital transformation, accessibility, and of course then some additional training links that you can go forward and look at after the session. So just to do a bit of recap, remember that last week we talked about PowerPoint. We talked about how in PowerPoint we have closed captions, we have PowerPoint Live that we can use, and then we also talked about them additional apps that we had, including Teams and how Teams is there. We talked a little bit about Stream. We talked a little bit about Outlook and how we use Teams. And then we looked at them additional apps. So then things like Microsoft Stream, Microsoft To Do, and Microsoft Planner. So they're things that we did in the last session. So let's think about then administration. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring into here my control panel here. And as I said to you, if you're using closed captions, they are available on Teams. So I'm just going to do that. If you're using closed captions, they are available on Teams, just so you can see them if you need them. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the admin panel. Now, one of the biggest things about this is that this has got some really useful things in for you as administrators. And I definitely say to you that as a company, as a school, you should definitely have more than one admin. You should definitely have a super user in your school to give you that kind of element to actually support that. Because there's things in here you can look at, and some of the things I want to just talk about very briefly is the biggest thing is about targeted releases. And targeted releases is the way that Microsoft roll out their software. The benefit of targeted release is that we are getting the software as soon as they are available for our tenant. So it's not like an insider program or a fast ring program, which is basically a program inside Microsoft or a program you sign up to. This is actually a product that is being rolled out globally, but we need to do it. And we actually want to do this we may want to do this to targeted users. We may want to do this to everyone. So if we just click on our little link up here, this brings up our information page. I'm just going to click across it and actually brings up our organizational settings. And the last one here says targeted release. So targeted release is really useful. Now, standard release means that everyone gets the broad updates. Right, the entire organization gets everything. Targeted release to selected users. So what this means, if I click on that one, everyone in my organization gets the targeted release. They get entire updates as early as possible. This one here means I can select a user. So if I said I wanted to add George, right, George there. So George is now added. That means that George would always get the latest version of everything. And that's really useful because if George does have a difference or a disability, it means that he's going to get the most up-to-date software. So if you see something coming out is really powerful, then that's really useful as well. Now, the other thing that's really useful as well is that when we look at this, is actually kind of like the reports and like the settings of your organization, any add-ins, and of course, that's what I was looking for. You can look at your service reports, and that's always really useful as well, that if you need help, you just submit a service report, and that can be really powerful for our learners as well. The other thing is actually in health, and that's what I was looking for. I was trying to remember where it was in my head, is actually the message center. Now, the message center is really powerful because actually what happens is that we get messages all the while. And if you are an admin, you actually get sent these messages. And this is really informative because basically if something new is changing or something new is being added, we actually might want to know about it. And that can be really important. So this here is a message here about uh, an update to SharePoint and OneDrive videos to make it easier for streaming. So this is really good. It gives you a roadmap link. And I would say to people that actually these are really useful to look at because you will find certain things linked back to accessibility. There was something the other day I was looking at around the use of Microsoft Outlook on your iPhone and on your Android device, which actually came out to be really good. And to me, that's really useful to actually know what is going on. So that's the second thing. So we've done about target releases, messages. Now, the other thing I want to just mention, of course, is then statistics. Statistics can be really useful. And if we go into reports, we can click on usage here. And actually, this will give us a really good overview of the usage over the past 30 days, over the past 190 days. Tell me how many people have used email, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams activities, number of forms being completed, if we've got Power BI, if we've got Yammer, Office 365 activations. This is really useful. And of course, then this brand new control panel here, this brand new dashboard for remote learning is actually also really useful where we can look at email activity, who's been sending emails, when did they last send them, when did they last log in. Again, very useful to have impact data. Now, the last thing I just want to mention also, of course, is that you can delve into Teams as well. And for me, going into Teams and logging into this here, looking at your Teams data, looking at what's going on, understanding that you've got your settings right for your external users, for your guests, for team settings, making sure that you're turning on closed captions. This is really important. This is where you'd set these things up. And to me, that's where you need to know it is. So they're kind of like three things that I kind of highlighted to myself that actually is really important. There's one other thing I want to mention to you as well is that is your password policy. And the benefit of this is that we can go up here, we just click on home and we can search for PAS password policy settings. And it does say here that actually you can enforce a password policy here. You set a password expiry date. One of these things here is really important to think about is that if you're going to do this, do you want to do it? I would say not to do it personally, and basically you could have a look at this concept here. Because if you have learners with additional needs, that is a really difficult conversation to have. And you have to kind of think about that and how you build that into your processes. So that's one of the things to think about as well. I really like this. It's really powerful where you can just search for anything. So I could search for ACCESS and we can look at actions, we can look at storage settings. So many things we can look at. It will tell you like the storage settings of how you store stuff. That is really useful, that searches. The other thing that is also here is this here. So this card here, which I think is really useful, training for admin, customizing guides, and support for training for users. This is really useful if you want to just kind of have a good overview. As an admin professional, as an IT professional, this is what you want to say to your admin. Do check this out. Do watch these. These are really useful videos. These are really kind of powerful videos on how to use Microsoft 365, how it all sets up. Lots of things you can look at there, which is really useful. So kind of gone over that administration concept. And kind of the most of today is actually looking at how we're going to move forward when it comes to this kind of creating that accessibility plan. So the last two sessions and the start of the session is kind of looking at the first two sessions, we're looking at all the technologies out there. So we've looked at immersive reader, we've looked at them concepts of how we do things. So we want to think about how we actually build that framework up. Now, what I've done is I've used the Microsoft K-12 education transformation framework here. And now I've pulled this together. I've added kind of conversation to have around that concept of accessibility. And I've kind of put my own wordings in this of how I would do stuff and how I would want people to think about it. And this is very beneficial. So if you want to find out more about this, the web link is at the bottom there, and you can go to that, or you can just search for the Microsoft K-12 education transformation. Now, of course, this is very powerful. It's very useful for learners. I've used it quite a lot with a few schools. So when we think about this, though, is remembering about all them features we've looked at. So remember about immersive reader, dictation, closed captions, PowerPoint Live, read aloud in Edge, all these things that we need to think about. So when we're looking at things like leadership and policy, modern teaching and learning, integral environment, and that technology blueprint, we have to think about it. Now, for me, we have to think about accessibility. So how do we look at that accessibility in leadership and policy? So we have to think about that concept around about knowledge within our school. We have to have strong leadership, and it has to be policy driven. For me, actually, the biggest way is to actually have it driven from that top level. So enabling that knowledge, and this is where leaders should actually have this. They should be able to go into the organization and understand it. So a senior leader should take this on. We know that within the UK, we should have special educational needs coordinators should be on the senior leadership team as according to the code of practice. So you should be leading on this as well with your IT professionals, with your assistant heads, because actually this is really useful. It is. When we think about policy, modern teaching and learning, we need to be thinking about enabling technology. So enabling technology may be thinking about different ways of using technology. So it could be around having devices, it could be around having collaboration. That assistive technology comes into this point. That technology we've talked about in the past comes in. We have to think about how do we deliver that AT element, and are we using that Microsoft infrastructure to its full potential? Are we using immersive reader in Edge? Are we delivering the right version of Edge to deliver that? And thinking about changing as well, like changing them practices, and it is actually embedding that kind of that element into there. And occasionally it comes about like that collaboration, that positive and that understanding the need within this area. And for me, that's really important. It is. For me, I'm like all about understanding that, because for me, we've got to be able to collaborate. We've got to be able to get in there. We've got to get that personal driven. We've got to get that prepared, that driven concept, and understanding that need is really important. So understanding your young person, understanding your child is kind of where I look at it. The technology blueprint is kind of, for me, kind of that top level is where it actually links back to me, to leadership and policy, devices, data and environment. What is there? We have to drive the data to make it work, and that's the thing, and that's where devices, and also we have to think about what devices we need. Do we need touch devices for certain people? Do we need Surface Go's, Surface Pros? These are the things we have to think about. So to think about delivering training programs for teachers. So what does that mean? So we're delivering that training program to teachers. We have to think about training. Training is so important. We have to embed training across the board. We have to. We have to also think about delivering training to our students as well. So for me, it's not just about that teacher element. Actually, it's about young people. Within my role within Microsoft, I've delivered awareness training both to teachers and to young people and to parents, because that is that kind of that full circle is there. And I think that actually parents need to be thought about in this process. We have to understand. Understanding is such a high priority. We have to think about what is the features, the purpose, and how we deliver that. So, why do we need immersive reader? What is it for? What does it do? So, it does text to speech. It does synchronize highlighting. It does parts of speech. It does syllable division. It does translation. All them things we need to know, because if we know all them things, we can then kind of get that right purpose for what it's being used for. The differentiation of learning is also there. And actually, that is really important that we have to differentiate learning and we have to find ways to support our learners. And that's kind of everyday teaching, isn't it? We also need to think about how we can support, how our young people can support each other. Their peer-to-peer support is kind of really important. Now, that sentence there is there for a reason, to give me a little bit of a concept. So many years ago, I was at an event, a big event in the UK called BET, and happened to be in a special educational needs conference, kind of like coffee session. And this was just talking about how we use technology and how we move technology forward. And one of the things that was mentioned there was about how we were embedding devices, and this was an iPad, and that's fine for this concept, into a school. And what happened was there was this girl in a mainstream school with Down syndrome, and she had Downs, and she had a support worker, TA, with her all the while, and that's good, that's fine. But she had no real friends. She didn't really get involved in games. She didn't really get involved in the playground. She kind of just walked around with this TA. Now, what they did is they gave her an iPad, and that iPad kind of opened up a little bit of a few doors. What it did was it actually enabled her to have a little bit more of peer support, because young people were interested in that. They were interested in helping, they were interested in having a go, and that is really powerful. It is. So that is really powerful. That is really helpful. And for me, that is how we deliver that peer-to-peer support. We have to think of ways of supporting each other. The other thing you can think about with this is that actually, from a whole digital transformation point of view, what are we doing with if we're in primary, what are we doing with our year sixes? Are we using them to support our year twos and year threes in delivering technology? Of course, then we have to think about what we need. So we need devices, of course, but do we need anything else? So if we think about that concept of saying, if we buy a Surface Go 2, we know a Surface Go 2 has got a decent microphone array. It's got a 2 microphone array built into it. So we hope then from a dictation point of view, that will work really well. But then we've got to think about, okay, we're in a noisy classroom. Actually, may we need a directional microphone for dictation? May we need to give our teachers a Bluetooth headset to deliver closed captions? May we need to give small devices like a Go2 or a Linux device, not Linux, a Lynx device that enables a young person to read stuff from the board quite easily? Do we need to think about BUID, bring your own device, within our young people that have these differences? Do we need to buy headsets? Do we need to buy this stuff? Do we need to buy external devices? Do we need to buy printers, eye gaze equipment? All these things are really important. And I think that's something that we have to think about when it comes back to looking at our young people. And this is where, going back to that sway we said at the very beginning, aka.ms/accessibility sway, because that sway gives us all them features that are available for our learners, and actually that will give us a really good idea to actually deliver them products. And of course, it comes down to quality first teaching. Everyone that is watching this, listening to this, or developing this within their environment, they are always looking at quality first teaching. For me, that's the most important thing, actually, that by delivering accessibility using technology into the classroom, we are developing quality first teaching. So let's think about that plan. How are we going to plan this? And it is kind of a four-stage plan. Understanding is really important, and this feeds back definitely into the kind of this concept around that kind of digital transformation planning, and we have to build it into it. And understanding is one of the big things. Knowledge is also really important. What is that? And of course, or what is there? And of course, technology. It is. It is. So that is really important to this. And that is really important when it comes to technology. So with an understanding, it's understanding your environment. What is there in the school? What is in that box? Do we have 10 laptops in there? Do we have 10 headsets in there? Understanding our teachers. What do our teachers already know? What do our teachers have? What kind of skills do our teachers have? And of course, understanding that young person. The young people are really important because actually that's what we're there to deal with. So, do we understand that need? What does it mean? How does it work? How do we support them? And that is really important. For me, that is the biggest thing about it is that we have to deliver this awareness session, this kind of implementation around using young people really importantly. So understanding that young person is really important. The knowledge. So who has the knowledge internally? Who has the knowledge internally? How can we deliver that knowledge and that awareness? Who has become a Microsoft Educator Innovator? Who has got that information internally? Who knows about dyslexia? Who knows about special educational needs? Who knows about autism? Internal knowledge is really important. But when do we need to bring external knowledge in? When do we need to bring someone in? And that's also important. When we look at this planner for these young people, that's what we need to think about. What understanding is there? So, what understanding is there? What is the understanding there? Identifying what is there and what we need is really important, and then finding a way to deliver it. So that is to me kind of that what is that understanding, what is there, what is how we do it is really important for me. And of course, then that technology, the identification and implementation. We have to identify what we need and how we do it. And of course, when we have to implement it. And we have to put that plan into there. So if we're going in this process, let's say we were doing this for September, we know we have 3 children. We have one child that has a hearing difficulty. We have one child that's dyslexic, and we have one child that has autism. Okay, so let's think about the per child with hearing difficulties. So we understand that child, we know that what their difficulty is. We know internally that we have closed captions on PowerPoint. We also know the knowledge that actually we can deploy that very easily with a headset. So we can get that equipment from what we need. We need a headset for our teacher so they can have a Bluetooth headset so they can walk around. And then also then we have that implementation point of view that by September we will have that training done internally and maybe from an external person. The same way with dyslexia, we're looking at immersive reader, and then with autism, we may say, okay, we're going to make sure that the color of the computer is a lower color, and that's really important as well. So, understanding, as I said, was really important. What is in that environment? What is in that knowledge? And how we understand the young people? They are really important. I think that's the biggest thing for me that that we go over these things and we kind of really delve down into that understanding. When we look at that knowledge, we can also think about how we deliver that knowledge. Do we get knowledge from online training? Do we get it from in-house training? Do we get it from sharing knowledge and from internal training? That concept there of kind of that internal and external concept that I mentioned a few minutes ago. We know that Microsoft have education.microsoft.com. We also know that Microsoft have aka.ms/accessibility sway, aka.ms/inclusive ultimate. These are all links that we've seen before, we've talked about over the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's online training. In-house training. Who can come in? Can we bring someone? Do we know anyone internally that's already done some of the training? Is there someone that can do that? Could we then start sharing knowledge through PowerPoint Recorder, through Sway, through Stream, through actually even just having a session at a staff meeting where someone says, okay, I know about this, do you know about that? And that is where we kind of really get that concept there. And also then that internal and external training knowledge, and that's really important. Understanding that need is so important. What need is that young person? What's that young person need? What are their difficulties? Really delve down into it because actually it's not just the difficulties. What are their strengths? Being able to deliver that young person's strengths and awareness is really important. I think being able to kind of see a young person for what they are and who they are and embrace that and embed that into that learning to enable them to actually achieve is really important. And I think that's understanding there it is. I've already said that slide there, but it is. And I think that it is a kind of a concept there that actually we need to deliver awareness to everyone. It is. treat themselves, it is help themselves, deliver it to teachers, kind of embed that in there. And that's kind of for me really important. I think that when I kind of thought about this presentation the other day, it was kind of really kind of resonates with me that actually for me it's the young person, it's the teacher, it's the need of everyone. Because you think about what it is that we also have young people at sorry, we also have teachers and members of staff within our environment that actually have a disability as well, or have a difference as well. We need to embed that and embrace that. That is also really important. Technology is so there. Identify what you've got. So, what is out there? Look at technology. Take away this concept of money. Forget about money for 20 minutes, 15 minutes. What is out there? So what could we enhance? So do we want a cost-effective device? Yeah, that's still thinking about money a little bit. Do we want a cheap device that is easy to walk around with? It's a laptop form factor. Do we want a clamshell? Do we want to be able to turn the device over? Do we want a tablet device? Do we want a two-in-one device? Do we want to go for a Windows device, an Android device, an iOS device, a Chromebook device? What is it we're trying to aim? All of them work with Microsoft, of course, because we're a cross-platform product. We're a cloud-first, mobile-first company. But what works for that child? What will help that child? So would a Surface Go be better than an iPad? In some senses, yes. Would an iPad be better for some children? Yes, it would be. And that is the thing we have to think about it. It is for someone that is blind, actually an iPhone might be better than a Surface Go. Someone that is deaf, and a Surface Go might be not right. It might be we need to go for an iPad or we need to go for an Android device. We may have someone that has dyslexia and actually is really creative. So a Surface Go might not be as powerful as a Surface Pro because they can do more with it. I use the word understanding, understanding that software and hardware. So this comes back down to touch. So do we need touch technology? Do we need non-touch technology? Do we need to have microphone arrays? Are there microphones in there? This is understanding of that software and hardware. What are we trying to support with that young person and that adult? That is where it comes down to. Understand the difficulties. What are we using it for? Right? High quality. This is the concept you see. High quality versus low quality. How do we deal with that? Is it worth actually spending a little bit more money on a device for a quality device to actually get the benefit out of it? I think in some respects that is. I personally, when I look at technology for my own dyslexia, I have an array of Surface devices. I work for Microsoft, so I like Surface devices. I have a large touchscreen device that I use on a regular basis because I find that very useful for me, and that's powerful for me. So I kind of think that's really useful, and I kind of like it. So, and I use that for like planning and drawing and doing stuff like that. For my kind of note taking, I often use my Surface Go on my iPad, depending on what I'm doing. It is if I'm brainstorming stuff, I'm sitting in the house, I use my Surface Pro. If I'm in my office, my daily driver is my Surface laptop, and I use these things for different reasons. And that implementation is like supporting that needs is that's the thing is like understanding the need of that young person and implementing it is really important and getting it right. I will always go on about training. Train the teachers. Training teachers and personal training is a lot better than sorry, individually training. So training yourself individually, using the Microsoft Innovator, using the Microsoft platforms to use that like education.microsoft.com to deliver that awareness is really important. Put in training for young people. I said it earlier, and I definitely would agree with it. Put in training for parents as well. Bringing their groups of people together is really important. Doing that from an external provider, doing that from someone like myself here in the UK, we could do that for free. That's not an issue because at the moment we can do that. But actually, for you guys, it may be something that you need to think about. And it may be that you have a member of staff. Maybe that actually you have a Microsoft Educator Innovator in your school that can deliver this awareness training. That is really important. So going forward, it is that training is that important thing, and I think for me, kind of like this session for me is kind of like we want to kind of grow further. Now, these resources here are some amazing education, kind of getting started points of view from a Microsoft 365 point of view, but also there from that fundamentals of inclusive classroom and creating that digital inclusivity learning community. And I think that they are really important. That inclusivity is part of this process. And for me, when I looked at this is that whole kind of plan that I showed you a few minutes ago is all about that really interesting concept. It is that when we look at these plans and we look at how we deliver this is actually kind of really important is because actually that we are looking at that knowledge, that understanding that and then taking that further forward. But actually for me, sorry there, uh, it kind of really kind of resonates that when we kind of go back to that framework, how we are putting it in, the framework there is really important. And of course, when we're looking at that framework, you are looking at it and delivering that in a way. And if we go back to this slide that I talked about earlier, how are we as a leadership embedding that knowledge? How are we delivering that? How are we supporting our learners? How are we creating that strong leadership? It works from the top down. I have evidence that I've seen schools that kind of have a Senko that are not part of that senior leadership team. They're at the bottom of the bottom. They are talked about in the sense that actually that oh that person has a disability. They go to the Senko. That's it. That's what some teachers say. It's not about that. If we drive it from the top down, we can deliver high quality teaching and quality first teaching to all of our learners. And it's the same concept when we're looking at devices, we're looking at that environment, we are embedding it in there to support our learners. And I think that's really important is remembering that actually that this training here is really kind of beneficial for that teacher and that teacher then can create their own training for their students and for their learners. This is just for teachers, of course, this learning here. Now, remembering that actually we will just go over another thing here, that actually for me, remembering this chart, and this is really useful for you when you're actually thinking about all of this concept. How are we delivering this learning tools environment? Remembering that actually learning tools works across platform. And this is where actually you can design and decide what platform we build in and put into our computer, into our organizations to support our learners. So if we have iPads, let's use iPads. Don't forget to download all the apps, having them deployed, because we know that saying we can look here, that Word for iPad and Outlook for for iOS has the read aloud feature built in. That is so important. That is really useful to have that. So the same thing with dictation, but then it's also then actually, and then I have to make this point, is actually knowing what is already out there. Knowing what is out there. Like if no one has ever seen this, haven't seen this before, this is Seeing AI. Seeing AI is an app that's designed for iOS. Now that app there is really important. It is. It's really important to think about that actually that can help someone read. It can help someone see distance in the sense that actually it will tell you how far away someone is when you take a picture of them. It will tell someone how happy someone is or how neutral they are. Could that be used for autism? These are things we have to think about. And when I kind of put my head together about thinking how we plan this, for me it's even harder it is because actually I know a lot of this knowledge. And I've kind of tried to pass on this knowledge to you over the past 3 sessions, it is, to actually deliver this awareness for you as learners. It is. Now, again, of course, we go back to this concept here of that fundamentals of learning and actually how we deliver that. We are looking at that kind of that element of what Microsoft are doing when it comes to the areas of aka.ms/accessibility sway. We're looking at learning. We're looking at them things. And of course, we don't forget that education at Microsoft is really important. That link there is the most important link you can go to actually support our learners. But of course, then the other link we want to look at is that inclusivity link. And I think that actually then that learners need to think about, sorry, and teachers need to think about actually how we learn and how we develop. And I really do think that actually putting an embed learning platform and an embed learning program into it is really important. So for me, it's kind of like growing that awareness to support our learners and to support our young people and to support our teachers. So delivering awareness sessions like looking at aka.ms/inclusive ultimate is really important. Now this session hasn't been as long as I thought it would be, but that is not an issue because the point about it is now the idea is for you to go away. It's for you to actually go away and now kind of use that kind of idea of how we use that understanding to make sure that we are embedding this. And because we need to remember that everything we're talking about is built in, it's mainstream, it's non-stigmatizing, and of course it's free. So by looking at a lot of the stuff we've talked about is free technology. Yes, we have the added additional expenditure of things like headsets, printers, eye scanners, devices, but The technology inside there is free. There's no additional cost to have text-to-speech. There's no additional cost to have closed captions. We can purely deliver this. And it is all about that fundamentals of success, empowering learners to be independent. That is so important. We can create an independent learning plan for each child through our SEM policies, but actually creating an independency is so, so important. Ensuring that all of you are empowered as teachers and educators. How important is that for you when it comes to a disability and accessibility? But then in creating inclusive environments, developing an environment within our schools and our colleges and our organizations that can really develop and really deliver that awareness to our learners. For me, that is so important as well. Getting it right for our young people is the foundation of success. For me, I wrote this, and I've read this every time. Putting technology at the heart of learning. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to explain it. Putting technology at the heart of learning, with accessibility tools built in for everyone, creates independent learners and ensures all students achieve their full potential. Putting technology at the heart of learning, that's the first sentence, or the first part of this. Devices, Microsoft 365, email, calendars, to-do, immersive reader, Teams, Flipgrid, Stream, PowerPoint record, different colored backgrounds, using Windows 10 to support accessibility, narrator, ease of access center, different colors for different people with color blindness, grayscale, night mode. That is thinking outside the box and putting technology at the heart of learning, because we're actually enabling young people to find all them things. Accessibility tools are all of what I've just mentioned. They're all accessibility tools that are built in for everyone. And we are making that foundation of that, creating that independency. As an adult, I know that I can click on the dictation button on Word and I can dictate. I know that when I'm in a classroom or when I'm doing a training session, I can make my mouse bigger so you can see it if I need to. I can also make it so it changes color when I hover over different colors so we can find it. Again, thinking outside the box. Ensuring that all students achieve. That's part of school, it's part of life, and they reach their full potential. We all can achieve, we can all grow, we can all empower each other. Using technology to enable that is really important. For me, when I wake up in the morning and I use to write my to-do list out, when I go onto my presentation and use dictation to create dictations, and that's why there may have been some spellings and a few errors in this presentation because I haven't listened to it or haven't checked it. But for me, that's kind of how it is. That's how my everyday life is. I can talk and I can support is really important. I want to thank you now for listening to my 3 sessions. I want you to go away and think of how you can develop this into your schools. Of course, if you want any support, there's my email address. I'm happy to help. If you want me to come into your school in the UK or want me to speak to you about how I can, follow me on Twitter, drop me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the recording. And if there is anyone on Teams that wants to ask me some questions, by all means, you can unmute yourself and ask me some questions. But the recording will stop first. So thank you for listening to the recording. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, do come back to me.